Welcome, everyone. I often get asked, what is this? What is this that I speak about? And it's everything. This is everything. This is all there is. There's never any more of this or less of this. And even though there's only this, there's just this, there isn't a this. You can't find this. You can't have this. You could say there's only being this, but you can't be this, no matter how hard you try. There's no other than. There's no outside of this. There's no inside of this. And this is unchanging, but appears to constantly change. The appearance never remains the same. Even if it's appearing to remain the same, it's not. Nothing remains the same. Nothing remains. So this everything is equally and also nothing. This fullness of everything, this incredible aliveness, this undeniable aliveness, is also undeniably empty. And it's the emptiness that's unchanging. The fullness always appears to change. As it appears, so it is lost. disappearance. And it can feel like having no hands. It can feel like having nowhere to stand. It can feel like free fall. But there really is no falling. There's nowhere to fall. There's simply nowhere else. And it may feel like this has never moved. The unmoving. The absolute stillness of this, regardless of all the movement. And in the same way, it may seem, regardless of all the sound, the cacophony, the singing, the screaming, is all silent. Silent, still, empty. Singing, dancing, full. So no matter how many times you've heard words like these and been to meetings like this and heard different characters speak a very similar message but in slightly different words, you'll never be closer or further away. This can't be approached. This can't be found. And it may come as a quite radical disappointment that the only finding is that there's nothing to find. So no matter who you fantasize that your favorite speaker, the ones that you genuinely think, oh yeah, they're liberated, it's just all your own fantasy, all of that. There are no others. There are no others. So wonderfully, every human being is equally as wonderfully ordinary as every other. And this annihilates all ideas of enlightenment and awakening and liberation. This is wide awake. This is absolutely free. This has no requirements, no conditions, all conditions. So the only thing that's on offer is what is, and of course that can't be given or received. What is already what is, as is, without exception. And the without exception may or may not feel like unconditional love. Of course, if it had to feel like unconditional love, it wouldn't be unconditional, would it? It feels just as it feels. So this isn't about feeling good. This isn't about happiness. This isn't about bliss. Maybe the only concession I might give is that it could be about the peace that passes all understanding. And the reason it might pass all understanding is it will make no sense at all that everything is utterly at peace, because there aren't any, there's not two, so there's no conflict, even in conflict. That won't make sense. And I should also say, this isn't what's being spoken about isn't some immunization against what aspects of life you want to get rid of, mainly the ones you call me and my shit. There is no me to get rid of. And the whole nature of unconditional love is it appears exactly as it appears.
Andy has his hand up.
Andy.
Oh yeah, can you hear me okay?
Hi, Andy. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Sorry, just moving my cat from the keyboard. Do you think, not in personal terms, but do you think there is such a thing as like enlightenment or awakening?
Doesn't matter a fuck what I think, Andy. It doesn't, does it? To be honest, if you believe, if you think there's something like enlightenment, then that's what you think. I mean, it's a thought. It's a.
Yeah.
Do you want? I mean, I can only give you what would be called my personal opinion.
Yeah. Please do.
It's not my personal opinion, but it's this human being's opinion, you could say. It's not mine. I would say, of course not. Of course, that would be any fantasy of enlightenment. Is there anything more egoic than the fantasy of enlightenment?
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. That's my sense of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If any, thank God, the way I speak about this, no one thinks I'm enlightened. No, thank fuck.
Yeah.
I can only, I can only be grateful for that. Imagine all the whole of humanity thinking you're enlightened. That would be quite dreadful, wouldn't it?
Yeah. A lot of pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is you could say, okay, so you could say the awakening is the impossibility of awakening.
Yeah.
So the awakening is there's no one to awaken.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to call that awakening, then you're welcome, but it's not really, because the idea that self has about awakening is always a personal awakening. It can't not be.
Yeah.
So whatever ideas self has about liberation, awakening, enlightenment, whichever word you prefer, there's kind of a hierarchy in spirituality. I don't know if you've noticed. Enlightenment's at the top,
Yeah.
and then there's liberation, just below, because freedom's okay, but you're not enlightened, but there is a certain freedom. And then underneath is awakening, which can just come and go. You had an awakening experience and then it fucked off again.
Yeah. Enlightenment for beginners. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. But of course, if you are truly enlightened, then that's for good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there can be no bigger crock of shit than that. There isn't any condition that's for good, is there? Isn't that obvious? No, I don't know that, but you are asking for my opinion, so I'm giving you it.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. The
And so the whole notion of enlightenment is destroyed by enlightenment, you could say.
yeah. There's like when you're following whether it's like a spiritual path from like a like a truly spiritual point of view, or whether it is like
Yeah,
like a non-duality in like philosophical terms, or that sort of thing.
yeah.
There's this really like self-referential sort of aspect to it that's just like
Mhm.
it's just fed by the search. I mean, when you notice it, it's really hard not to see it happening. Like you hear someone say a nice sentence or throwing some ideas out there, and then there's this immediate kickback of like, have I understood that? Do I agree with that? Where does that put me in my position? And it's like, have I found the right book? Have I found the right speaker? Have I found the right thing? And then it's just that. And then when you're like that is the me. That is literally
Yeah,
like you are trying to find a way out, and in doing so, totally ensuring that you can't find a way out. It's this really strange feedback loop it's like it's mad to see it happening. I mean, from your sort of personal experiences, did you see that dying away at any point, or stopping altogether, or
well,
coming and going?
I think like you, I would say in my story, I saw it a long time before anything ever fell away.
Yeah,
I could see the futility of it and the nonsense of it. It was obvious a long time before I ever started speaking about this that all my understanding, and I tried really very hard to understand
yeah,
and learn, was absolutely worthless.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
That's
think
why I
that's
love
right.
the phrase. That's why I love the peace that passes all understanding, because peace has nothing to do with understanding at all. In fact, there's no peace in understanding.
Yeah, well, because how much understanding is enough understanding, and then when to
Exactly.
get to
You're
the
only
level of satisfaction. Yeah,
absolutely, because all you're going to do is listen to someone else and hear them and their greater understanding and go, oh fuck, I've still got to get there.
yeah, or this is the guy now. I've got to start from scratch with this guy's sort of
Yeah,
teachings or
I mean,
whatever. Or yeah,
well, I mean, all I did, probably like you, Andy, I just went from one speaker to another. I went to one speaker, and then I would have, maybe a glimpse, or I'd have some flash of aha moments,
yeah,
where there was some, I thought I would usually call it clarity, probably,
yeah,
and think that was it. But of course, what we're speaking about annihilates all that
yeah,
more of understanding is of any significance.
yeah. It's just
And
it's odd that it like it even like non-duality and stuff goes out the window with it. It's not like, oh, this has led me to this point of X, Y, and Z. It literally everything when that sort of self-reflective impulse isn't there, like nothing's there. Literally nothing is there at all. It's
no,
yeah, it literally clears the decks for everything. Yeah,
yeah. Oh, yeah. The whole notion that, because I don't know how many of you think that I think that I'm speaking the truth, and that I'm speaking, I'm speaking what I know to be true. That's not it. This is a doubtless uncertainty that this seems to come from.
yeah,
And the doubtless uncertainty is not, it doesn't feel that that's mine. It's not my uncertainty. It's just that I don't doubt that there's no certainty about life at all. It's a complete mystery in its absolute ordinariness. What seems to be known hasn't disappeared, and yet it's not believed.
yeah,
And it might sound as though I believe, this is a belief. This isn't a belief at all. This doesn't feel philosophical
yeah.
or a belief. As I often say, as my dad would have said, yeah, I'm just stating the bleeding obvious.
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of my. Well, my dad didn't really hear me speak about this, but I was already interested in it while he got dementia, but I did talk to him a little bit about it, and basically that there's only this, and he would go, well, that's bloody obvious, isn't it? And I go, yeah, that's it, Dad, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, this is too obvious. There's no doubt about that. So what we're speaking about isn't mystical.
Yeah.
It might sound mystical.
Yeah, it's the paradox thing, isn't it, that makes it sound slightly mystical.
Yeah, I mean, paradoxes do sound mystical, but if there aren't two, then of course all paradoxes just all opposites fall into each other. So
Yeah.
paradox is the only thing that makes sense. And there is a great irony that paradox doesn't feel paradoxical at all. It feels the only thing that's vaguely approaching true.
Yeah.
It's not it's not true. It's not more true than it's not any more true than what most people believe. But so this isn't about the truth. This is saying that no one knows the truth. No one has known the truth. That
Yeah.
the truth isn't knowable. And there's just an incredible simplicity in that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking to me. I don't want to dominate all the time, so thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
Tim.
thanks, Andy.
Razia has a hand up.
Hi, Razia.
Hi, Tim. Yeah, enlightenment is such a interesting kind of a thing to talk about. It is a thing.
I thought you were going to say it's a crock of shit.
Well, it depends from where you're looking.
I tell you what, it depends on whether you it depends on whether you want it or not.
Exactly. Or whether people feel you have it and you have something to give them. So, yeah, from the perspective of the dream, I mean, there is this kind of a change that takes place. People seemingly become enlightened, and the desire obviously is there for this. That's why the seeking, and yeah, and then like today I read something which was very interesting, and it said like it's a brain thing, you know, like the people that live that have this right brain dominating, they think that everything is interconnected, everything is oneness, everything is beautiful, you know, it's all me, wholeness. Yeah, and then the left brain is more like slice, dice, and bring it into details, like, you know, separation. So we are this left brain. I mean, obviously, personas, as personas, we have a left brain that seems to separate everything, and a right brain that is this wholeness, that it looks at everything and says, wow, I am this, I'm this awesomeness, you know, connected to all and everything. So, and then, yeah, and then you look like, and people say there are certain things you look for, like about being enlightened. But at the deepest level, there's no such thing, like you said. Like you said, there's no one to be enlightened.
No.
Yeah. So it's like the desire for enlightenment is there until it is realized that there's no one to be.
Yeah.
Or not to be. Yeah.
I think I really don't think most people, even in non-duality or in any spirituality, want enlightenment. Nearly everyone wants to be free of suffering and free of what they see as the cause of suffering, which is themselves.
Yes.
And of course, that isn't on offer either, because there isn't a self to be free from.
Yeah, and there isn't even a choice, like, you know.
No,
or,
no.
Yeah, to be free or not to be free, to be enlightened. Yeah.
I would say, because I often have people suggest to me that me being empty, when I meet other human beings, I can tell. So it's the same as the idea of an enlightened being would notice another enlightened being. Well, if that's proof of enlightenment, that's proof that I'm not enlightened, because I see human beings and I see I see human beings who I like being with, and I see human beings who I try and avoid. And I just think it's absolutely natural. I mean, the whole nature, the whole, you know, being human is being human. And that's what's revealed. So the revelation is that every single human being is equally as special in their ordinariness, regardless of what spirituality says about their attainment, awakened or enlightened. And
isn't at the end
the whole idea that I could see, I can meet a human being and tell whether they have a self or not, is just pure nonsense.
Yeah, I think so too. And like, I mean, people ask me that and I say, I don't know, you know?
No.
Yeah, how would you know that, whether you have a self or not?
No idea.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know for myself, so how am I going to know for another?
Yeah.
I'm talking
But I mean,
about,
like, at the end of the day, term, people might become enlightened or whatever, but then it's like you come back to the same thing. It's just this, whatever is appearing. It's not like you're going up there and looking at the world from a different perspective, up the sky or whatever. I don't know. That's what I want to know. If people become enlightened, does it mean they have something
Well,
better?
I think most ideas of enlightenment are about transcending.
Yeah,
In some way or another, it's about transcending.
the
And-
human form.
And what I'm speaking of is not about transcending at all. It's complete imminence, you could say, as the opposite of transcending. It's like there's no distance. There's no distance between anything. So there's no distance between what there would have been, which is between me and feeling, or between me and thought. So there would be, and there's no distance between me and other. I mean, there is only everything appearing.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, if I'm taking up someone's time, but no one has raised their hand yet. But I mean, like it's thought, right? The moment you think something, like that's what seemingly separates me from whatever is, right? And I bring it into existence. Not me, but this big self, or whatever people call it. I don't know. Brings seemingly, I don't know. Do you think that's it? That the thought, it is thought that separates us. At the moment we start to think, and that when all thought ceases.
No, because that kind of, I wouldn't say that, just because it sounds as though, okay, thought is the problem, and of course the problem self has most selves constantly trying to manage their thoughts, to control them, where thoughts just appear total there. I mean, thoughts are probably the best example of you have no say over anything, because it's very obvious that you haven't made that thought appear, and the whole notion of that thought is appearing to you, that can just, because it's never been the case. That's the illusion that the story that self tells itself, that I am.
Yes.
This notion of the witness, which is very popular in spirituality, to get some distance from feelings and thoughts.
Yeah, to detach yourself, so to speak, from your thoughts. Yeah.
I mean, when I was doing some therapy, there was a lot about that, getting some distance. You are not your thoughts.
Yeah, I know. There was a stage when I actually used to look at every thought that I had. Try to correct every thought that came into my head.
When you look at every thought, that looking at every thought is just another thought, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, looking at a thought is a thought of looking for a thought, at a thought by another thought.
Yes.
There's no
that's the thing.
There's no exception to that.
Yeah, so you're constantly correcting the thought, and then you're engaging with that thought, and then the thought becomes like true now, and it becomes a story. And then you start to believe that. And then when you break it down, you get back to the original thought and you say, God, I mean, I made a whole story here, Yeah, it's exciting. Thanks.
Is it exciting?
Yeah. It's awesome, like that we are this humanness, that that can bring this whole thing into beingness, and we have created this awesome world in our minds. Like when we look out there, we're not even seeing what's out there. Like, we're projecting this whole world. I don't know. And you don't know. So so at the end of the day, enlightenment, people are forever defining enlightenment. They're telling you what qualities you should have, what you should look for. People will test you. Now, are you enlightened or not? Kind of a thing. Yeah. No, by whose criteria are they testing you?
I'm quite sure that I would fail all tests of enlightenment, but I think you would too, Razia.
Yeah, because I mean, I have failed a couple of times and people were disappointed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there is no hope, but the only hope is disappointment.
Yeah, but I'm so glad that I have people like you that I can talk to
Thanks,
and
Rosie.
who make it seem so fun. Thanks.
I was just thinking about Tony's book. You know that one? Was it called This Freedom? I think he had a book called This Freedom. And I was thinking about freedom. And of course, there isn't any freedom because there isn't anything that's bound to be free.
No.
The whole idea of freedom is that. I mean, I understand why.
No, the
Why?
whole, well, yeah, any notion of freedom is only for the one who's imprisoned.
Yeah.
If there's only freedom and this is, that liberation, if this is only liberation, then of
And
course there's no
no liberation.
No, that's another reason I might call it disappointing. One who is seeking something else. So if you're seeking liberation, liberation isn't present, which of course it is, because there isn't anywhere else. So in the very act of seeking liberation, all you're doing is confirming your imprisonment.
Yeah.
Or your bondage.
Yeah. And yet even the act of seeking liberation is liberation.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be, this couldn't be complete liberation if it couldn't be bound, could it?
No.
And again, that's why I talk about unconditional love. So that it's not that unconditional love is when you're free from self. No, self is unconditional love, of course. Yeah. And there's great compassion. There's an incredible compassion for the vast majority of human beings who really suffer for feeling to be themselves. And there's great compassion for seeking to be free from that suffering. I mean, Tony always said, you brought up Tony already, he always called this the only compassion, which when I was really in turmoil as a seeker, I fucking hated him for. He would say, this is the only compassion. I go, you bastard. You bastard. How dare you?
But it could also be not particularly feeling compassionate.
Oh, no, it's nothing to do with feeling compassionate.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, because the liberation is for all feeling, for, yeah. Yeah. But when I'm asked why I do this still, it for love, for compassion, even though it might not be seen as such. That's the motivation. The motivation is that everything is okay when it's not okay. It's okay. It couldn't be otherwise. And the only reason it couldn't be otherwise because it's not otherwise. Not that you can't imagine how it could be otherwise. That couldn't be otherwise either. All your hopes and dreams of how it could be other. That's equally just as it is. Sometimes the love feels too much. Feels overwhelming. Can do.
Sophie, go ahead, Sophie.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Tim. Hi.
Hi.
When you said hi, when you said it's overwhelming, you meant like the unconditional love?
Yeah.
In what way?
Feels like my chest will burst. I mean, physically, sometimes.
What do you mean?
I mean, it can feel the love can feel unbearable. Everything.
It's a physical thing?
Yeah. Well, I kind of have, I've lost track of physical from psychological, from spiritual, from I find it very hard to categorize. If somebody says, do you mean you think or you feel or you, yeah, I mean, it's because they're all kind of false categories, all of that, you know. Self likes that because then I can know where to put it and I know where it is, and I can put it to one side and I can put it away, I can hide it, or I can put it to one side. It doesn't feel like there are categories of what we call being human. The way in which thoughts and feelings are probably the easiest. That self is very good at saying, oh, that's just a thought and that's just a feeling, whereas of course or thoughts lead to feelings because that makes sense, and self likes that, but really experience comes all at once. And I don't mean that I constantly live with the sense of my body's going to explode with love. I don't mean that. I mean just sometimes it can be overwhelming, and usually it ends in tears, or maybe just it's a sad kind of love. And sometimes it's melancholy, and sometimes it feels like grief, because in a very real way everything is always being lost, but that feels like love. So grief feels like love. That can feel overwhelming. Joy, sometimes when I'm with my son and there's just an overwhelming love of my son, and he's just a beautiful, fragile human being like the rest of us, and the fragility of beings is just so undeniable, and all the beauty is in that. The beauty is in that everything passes. And I mean, life is incredibly, being alive is so fleeting and precarious and utterly unsafe. When I experience that when I'm with my children, sometimes I can't even breathe with that. And it's love. But, so some people might say, oh, that's because you're afraid for your children, that's anxiety. But it just feels like love. That's what it is.
Maybe it's the word like overwhelming. It feels like it's too much, or when you use that word.
Because it's everything, yeah. I mean, it's sort of here all the time, because everything is always present. There isn't anything else. So the whole idea, the whole notion of self feeling small helps to stop that sense of overwhelming. I mean, this is everything. And of course, why wouldn't everything feel kind of overwhelming? You're going to feel everything. There's feeling everything. Because I have no doubt, this is only theoretical, but I don't doubt it, that self is like a buffer. It's like a protective mechanism so that I don't feel everything. Because if I feel everything, I'll feel too vulnerable. So I wear this suit of armor, which I call myself, which protects me. And even though but of course it imprisons me. It doesn't, but it is kind of, the more protected. It's a bit like wealthy people who live behind a barbed wire fence and a high brick wall with guard dogs. And that's how I see self quite like that. And of course, this is very isolating. But self is terrified that if I felt all the love, then it would be too much. Now, it's not too much. When I say it might feel overwhelming, what I'm suggesting is that don't be surprised if you feel overwhelmed if there's less protection. I think the whole nature of self is a protective.
Yeah, like controlling everything.
Yeah.
No.
Because absolutely, I mean, there is no security. And self kind of knows that. And so that's why. So self feels very necessary to protect myself.
Yeah, but it's so weird. Why would you want to block love? I mean, it's so crazy. Such a crazy thing.
Just to keep safe.
Yeah.
And there is, so, I mean, I don't speak about this probably as much as I should, but what I'm speaking of is there is no security at all. But that sounds terrible, but there isn't anyone to be secure, to be safe. There isn't anyone that actually needs protection. And self is the very sense of, I need to protect myself.
Because without that protection, like one would be what? Vulnerable, open.
Yeah, you're open to everything. Yeah. And it's different. It's very different for different individuals, but for most individuals, it's so that I don't feel everything.
So crazy, huh? So crazy.
Especially the feelings that I'm afraid of, which mostly is sorrow, grief. This is being unable to deny that everything is always lost. So
Yeah, that's it. No.
And I mean, a self will avoid that at virtually all cost.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because sometimes I do talk about that with people because it's a fascinating thing. I mean, I'm really fascinated by the fact that everything is always disappearing all the time.
Yeah.
And
but of course it appeared. The thing is,
yeah,
I mean, but then of course it's born as it does.
Yeah. But it goes so fast, you know. It's like
Well, it hasn't got any speed.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. I really love that. But when you talk with that, it's like, yeah, people are really, yeah.
Well, I mean, it is mind blowing. I mean,
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to go and see Lisa Cairns quite a bit, and her favorite phrase was, "This is a complete mind fuck."
Yeah.
I used to like her saying that.
It's a nice mind fuck.
Yeah, this is, I mean, the newness is the dying. Yeah. So this is this is the beginning and the end with no space between.
But for me personally, it's the most amazing thing, because then you just realize like how everything is like not even temporary, it's just disappearing.
No, there isn't any continuity at all. There's and yeah, of course, there is the appearance of continuity, because you know I will probably get up in the morning and this house looks pretty much the same as it did yesterday. So it's a powerful illusion.
But it's in constant change. It's always changing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So then the idea that this is the same as it was a moment ago is illusory. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Thank you, Tim.
It is beautiful. I mean, yeah, and nothing remains.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that it is only nothing that remains.
There's actually so much freedom in that, but it's a scary kind of freedom, because you want to hold on to things, you want to fix things.
Yeah. But of course, you can't see. Nothing remains might sound like you could hold on to nothing, but of course there isn't. There's nothing to hold on to.
Yeah.
So it's a strange kind of security. You know, this, but then there is a kind of security in nothing and emptiness. But not. There is a. You know, there is a strange kind of comfort in. Because everything is in the same, there isn't any exception to this. Everything is passing. Nothing remains. So the whole idea of me is the sense of me is the illusion of continuity, is the illusion that I just continue. Well, it's empty. That whole idea, that sense of me is empty.
It's a funny kind of security, like a security that you cannot hold on to anything.
Yeah. But of course, if there is no security, that is a very odd kind of security.
Yeah. Crazy. Thank you, Tim. It's beautiful.
Crazy, yeah. You're not wrong.
And of course, to someone who's seeking, the idea of being more vulnerable or more open or feeling more is very appealing, because if you feel like a self or a person, being more open and more vulnerable means you're a better self.
Yeah. Do you think?
I think it can. I think if you're seeking the stories of overwhelming love, can feel appealing, even though the overwhelming sense of it might seem when you speak about it, it sounds not appealing, but it can be appealing as well, because
Well,
many cells want to feel more love.
oh yeah, I guess, yeah.
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 The thing is, when I'm talking about love, I'm talking about it in yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and yet, of course, I'm saying it's not appealing, and yet, of course, I am saying, and then I am speaking about it, and I'm motivated to speak about it. So that's a paradox in itself, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and that continuity, waking up in the morning and the room is still the same room, really is there's just that story of yesterday and it being the same room.
Yeah, and yeah, it only works because of memory. You could say self is only memory. Yeah. Just before we finish, if anyone got anything else they'd like to ask, or in the last 5 minutes. I set up a couple of meetings today. I'm going to have another meeting at my house here at the end of February the Saturday. Just check that I've got the right date. Saturday the 22nd of February. So that's 3 weeks on Saturday, 4 weeks on Saturday. And then I've also got a weekend in Brighton, and both of these are on my website if you would like to come to meet in person. So I'm doing a weekend in Brighton at my friend Brendan's, Saturday and Sunday, for the weekend of my birthday, as a treat. Well, thank you very much for coming, everyone. Lovely to see you all.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Darren.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim. Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you all.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks,
Thanks.
Darren.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Tim. Bye. See you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.